Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tried to slow down the progress of the House Republican push for new oil and gas leases on federal lands.
But in the report, there is a failure to acknowledge the disproportionate impact that these changes have on communities of color and other frontline communities.
The House Natural Resource Committee recently met to adopt its work plan for the new Congress, which included language highlighting the fact that the Biden administration has leased fewer federal acres for oil and gas development than any presidential administration since the end of World War II.
Judy, early on, President Biden halted any new oil and gas leases on public lands.
The committee's plan is focused on examining the lack of oil and natural gas leasing on federal lands in the western United States and addressing administrative actions that have created permitting delays and disincentivized production on federal lands. Ocasio-Cortez attempted to throw a wrench in the plan by offering an amendment that will require the committee to collect, quote, public health data and other impacts of new drilling on federal land.
Mr. Chair, in this report, it does seem, well, first I want to acknowledge that after a long history of various individuals in the body denying the existence of climate change, I do want to say that it's very encouraging to see that there is some acknowledgement of the climate crisis here in the report. But when we look closer, it does seem that it's only mentioned about twice, once to criticize climate science at the U.S. Geological Survey, and once in a section offering scientifically dubious solutions. But in the report, there is a failure to acknowledge the disproportionate impact that these changes have on communities of color and other frontline communities, many of whom are all of our constituents. So I'm proposing an amendment that would require the collection of public health data and other impacts of new drilling on federal lands. My colleagues say that opening more of our federal lands to fossil fuel development is what their constituents want and need. I'm not here to dispute that point in this moment. But I will say that surely if that is the case, then there should be no objection to gathering better data on the health impact of these policies on the health and safety of everyday Americans. So I truly believe this is a common sense amendment that would help protect and inform the American people, especially the most vulnerable among us. And I urge my colleagues to support the amendment.
However, Republicans counter her proposal, arguing that it disregarded the health benefits that energy development has provided to individuals for many generations, like clean water, electricity, etc. Here is Republican Matt Rosendahl of Montana's response.
How can you ignore that emissions have actually gone up during this administration? How can you ignore the millions of people around the earth that have had clean water, indoor plumbing, lights, electricity provided to them, making their lives better, literally extending their lifespan, lifting them out of poverty by having access to electricity that's been provided by coal, oil, gas, or other fossil fuels? It simply can't be ignored. Their lives are better, their lives are longer as a direct result of that. So to sit there and say that we should be trying to eliminate these fuels is absolutely absurd, ridiculous. The desire by this administration to shut down our domestic energy production is causing prices to escalate, forcing Montanans to make difficult decisions about heating their homes or simply putting food on their table. And those are facts. Many people overseas are harvesting the remaining timber that exists in their country, having access to, in order to burn firewood, in order to heat their homes. This is bad for the environment and terrible for those who are forced into those situations. Unfortunately, my colleagues across the aisle have been extremely selective about when they would like to use science-based information. How about if we start using science-based information about managing the population of grizzly bears in the state of Montana, which populations are at 300% and 400% of the target populations, so that we can delist these animals? How about if we use science-based information and allow the state of Montana to continue to manage our wolf populations, which are 10 and 12-fold beyond the target populations? And how about if we allow forest management practices to that would prevent millions of acres from burning each year, absolutely ruining air, land, and water quality across the state, across the nation, and start using some best management practices on how to take care of those forests, which would not only help keep our air, land, and water clean, but it would also help the economy, provide jobs, and be better for everyone who's connected with it.
Other Republicans viewed the amendment as an attempt to prevent new leasing on federal lands. Representative Lauren Boebert, a Republican from Colorado, criticized the amendment as an effort to impose climate change ideology on the Republican Party's plan to secure the country's future and strengthen its national security through stable energy supplies.
So with this amendment, I don't think any of us are opposed to actually having oversight to understand the health and safety with our fossil fuel productions. We want you to know the truth. We want you to see these reports. But as the gentleman from Wisconsin stated, there was a but in that. Not at this time. At this time, we aren't going to use that to go against fossil fuels, but we will use it later. We have been studying the science of fossil fuels. I worked in the oil and gas industry myself, and I know that no one produces energy better than we do, cleaner than we do. And instead, we have an administration right now that's begging Iran, begging Venezuela, begging Saudi Arabia, emptying our strategic petroleum reserves in the name of a midterm election. This is not in the name of public health and safety. This was in the name of an election to get fuel prices down $1 or $2 so they wouldn't have a complete decimation of their party and they would still hold on to their levers of power. And thankfully, the American people saw through some of that. But I mean, just going through this, fossil fuel extraction is a significant driver of carbon pollution. If carbon pollution is your main aim, then let's talk about managing our forests, because one catastrophic wildfire emits more carbon emissions in a few short days than every vehicle in my state of Colorado running 24/7 for an entire year. So if carbon pollution is what you're after here, then let's get together and manage our forests. We have 6 billion standing dead trees in the western United States, all creating a massive tinderbox waiting to ignite. If you want to talk about water quality, then again, let's talk about managing our forests, because healthy forests have healthy watersheds. We can have water resiliency discussions and water storage discussions where we're seeing policies in states like California where they're dumping hundreds of billions of gallons of water into the ocean where they otherwise could have stored it. If you're talking about low-income communities being impacted, well, let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about how our energy independence lowers inflation. And that's something that this administration surrendered on day one. This is something that they attacked immediately. We should be energy dominant right now. Our natural gas is 42% cleaner than Russia's. So why are you supporting Russia and their energy production and not America? Why are you pro-Putin when it comes to natural gas? Let's export liberty, export freedom around the globe, and send our clean LNG to these countries who are currently relying on dictators. And when you're talking about the indigenous communities, well, I invite you all to come to my district where one of our tribes has the first ever zero emissions net power natural gas fired plant. This is innovative. And this is what we should be doing with our other plants, our coal-fired energy plant in Craig, Colorado. I would love to see that transition into what our tribes are doing on their reservations, on their tribal land. And so come out and see what this looks like. See what this net zero energy production actually looks like. Even in Colorado, our coal is arguably the cleanest coal in the world. And climate extremists are sacrificing that at the altar of climate change. And look, I'm not here to deny climate change. I don't think anyone here is. It happens 4 times every year. We're very, very much aware of that. And what we can do to lessen pollutants, we're here for it. That's why we are pro natural gas. That's why we want to lower folks' energy bills. Have you seen the price of energy bills lately? That's because we're banning gas electronics, appliances. That's because we're pushing all of this green energy that's not efficient, it's not reliable, it's not renewable. And I would love to see an actual study on our fossil fuel production, but not in this manner, because there are hidden elements in it. And for that reason, I will be opposing this amendment.
The committee ultimately rejected Ocasio-Cortez's amendment in a party line vote of 21 to 15, preventing it from being included in the committee's work plan.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the yeas are 15 and the nays are 21.
This amendment is not agreed to.
Subscribe to our channel because we the people are endowed by our Creator with these unalienable rights: life, liberty, and guns.